Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for tonight's NAC at Home program, Women's Works, Female Artists at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. My name is Laura Daly, and I am a member of the Roundtable Committee. For those of you not familiar with the National Arts Club, we are a 501c3 nonprofit based in New York City with a mission to stimulate, foster, and promote public interest in the arts. Annually, the club offers more than 150 free programs to the public, including exhibitions, theatrical, musical, and dance performances, lectures, and readings. For more information about the National Arts Club, you can visit us at nationalartsclub.org or find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. This event will be recorded and posted within 24 hours on the NAC's YouTube channel for you to enjoy again and especially to share with friends. Following tonight's presentation, there will be a question and answer session, so please feel free to use the Q&A function for any questions that you may have. Now, please welcome Linda Selman, fellow Roundtable member and co-chair of the Theater Committee, who will introduce tonight's event and presenter. Take it away, Linda.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. As you can see, we members of the National Arts Club, we love to be part of each other's committees. So when I was introduced to this marvelous event, I thought this is the perfect match for the Roundtable. My honor this evening is to introduce you to our wonderful speaker, Emma Guest-Gonzalez, PhD, art historian, president of Guides Association of New York City, principal guide of My New York City Tours, and tour ambassador captain at One World Observatory at One World Trade Center. This evening, Emma will enlighten us about the careers and art of some of the most important female artists and patrons at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, who are often limited by their gender in their subjects and mediums, plus how female collectors help shape the Met. This presentation focuses on artists whose works are currently on view at the Met, so you can see them in person when visiting the museum. And now I would like to introduce you to the lovely Emma Guest-Gonzalez.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much. And thank you, Laura, for hosting me. I'm very happy and very proud to be giving this talk to you all this evening. So I'm going to share my screen so we can get started. And if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A section of that you'll see on your screen. Are we all set, Nadine? Everyone can see?
We are good to go.
Great. Thank you so much. So welcome to Women's Work, Female Artists at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. My name is Emma. I have a doctorate in art history, and I'm also a professional licensed New York City tour guide. Here is the Met, our wonderful, wonderful museum. If you are not from New York, I hope you've been to New York and you have visited it on occasion while you're here. The museum is open, it's welcoming, people are going back into it, and it's just a wonderful place to be. It really needs no introduction. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start by introducing women artists. And speaking about women artists, and over this tradition, starting from very early, women have been artists for centuries. And so here I'm showing two illuminations by women. On the left, we have Gouda, and on the right, Clarissa. With the image on the right, we're not sure if Clarissa was the illuminator or the patron, but you can see a woman, a young woman, hanging off the bottom of the letter. That's a letter Q. And then on the left, you can see Gouda, who was a nun, who was in a convent, and who painted that letter. In fact, it says, Gouda, a sinful woman, wrote and illuminated this book. This is written around in the letter. So women have been, like I said, artists for centuries. But we don't always know these women unless they signed their works of art. And in the medieval period, even male artists didn't often sign their works of art. But there's a great tradition of women as artists, as we can see here in these two illuminations by an artist known as the Master of the Coronation of the Virgin. These are French manuscript illuminations, but they show two women creating art. Marcia painting her self-portrait and Tamar painting the Virgin Mary. And this is from a book by Giovanni Boccaccio. It's called On Famous Women. Basically, on the story of famous women includes two artists. Now, when we think of women as artists, we'll think of them working on paintings, as sculptors, also making jewelry and other fine works of art. And so I'm going to try to give us in this discussion tonight a whole range of different works of art, and that we'll look at them together. We will not look at manuscript illuminations per se, but I did want to introduce women in this way. One interesting story I like to tell about women as artists: in 2019, in Germany, they found the bones of a religious woman outside of a convent, and it was a cemetery, and they analyzed her teeth, and they found little tiny microscopic grains of lapis lazuli pigments preserved in the tartar in her teeth, which shows she was an artist. And what she was doing, she was clearly licking her paintbrush and then continuing to her work. So that's how the pigment got in her teeth. So it's really sort of concrete representation, concrete knowledge we have of women as artists. Now, women were also patrons, and this is very important, especially when we're talking about the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Here we can see Catherine Lorillard Wolfe. Now, when she passed away in 1887, what she did was she left a bequest to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She left paintings as well as an endowment for funds for an endowment to purchase works of art. And this was the first permanent endowment fund for buying art given to a major museum. And this was in 1887. She was a philanthropist and a collector, gave large amounts of money to institutions such as Grace Episcopal Church and Union College, but her gift to the Met was really the most significant. And you can see from the headline from the Times there, paintings willed to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a splendid collection of art for the public, fit companions to the Vanderbilt and Seney gifts. And so what we have here is a woman of means, a woman of standing, giving this great work to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And the Wolfe Fund is still used today by the Met to purchase works of art. Now, on the left, we've got the beautiful painting by Pierre-Auguste Cotte of the Storm. Her cousin, John Wolfe, was one of Cotte's patrons, and he told his cousin to purchase this. And then this beautiful painting by Turner, The Whalers. This was purchased by money from the Wolfe Fund in 1896. And so when you're at the Met, and if you see the Wolfe Fund, you know that is still money coming from the funds given by Catherine Lorillard Wolfe. Now, here's a view of one of the galleries that bears her name, the Wolfe Gallery, and you can see in the background and I hope you can see my cursor right here, you can see the Turner painting. So you know this is post 1896, but what the Wolfe request did was not only bring these funds to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but it also brought in more collectors. People saw the positive publicity, her name in the paper, this wonderful gift that people, were so pleased to have for the museum. And so collectors started thinking of making donations as well. It also brought large numbers of people to the museum, and her paintings were so well known. This gift was such a big deal, really, that it attracted more and more crowds to the museum. And so other American collections started to do the same. Another great collector, another great person for the Metropolitan Museum of Art is Louisiana Waldron Elder Havemeyer. Louisiana Havemeyer is one of my favorite personalities when it comes to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She was married to Henry O. Havemeyer, and this is, we're talking great Gilded Age funds here, and here the money's coming from sugar. Harry Havemeyer was like the head of the big sugar monopoly. If you know the Domino Sugar Factory, that was Havemeyer Sugar. That was the Havemeyer Sugar Factory. So when it comes to art, Louisiana Havemeyer went to Paris when she was a teenager. And while she was in Paris, she met the American artist Mary Cassatt. And Mary Cassatt became her art advisor. She was the one who told Louisine to purchase artworks by Degas, and she helped Louisine and Harry develop one of the finest collections of art in the United States at their home on Fifth Avenue and 66th Street. They were huge patrons and supporters of the Met, and really for generations. Her children and her grandchildren gave funds and gave works of art to the Met as well. Now, when her husband passed away, she became a suffragist, really dedicated to the suffrage movement. And what she did was she also used her art to support the cause. In 1912, Knoedler had an exhibition of her art to raise funds. She donated funds to help found the National Women's Party with Alice Paul, and she even picketed in front of the White House. She participated in what was called the prison special, as these women who had been arrested for picketing were taken from place to place. And here's this wonderful, wonderful image of Mrs. Havemeyer passing the suffrage torch across the waters and going from New York to New Jersey. This torch was traveled around. And she really wanted the art exhibition that I mentioned. She only would do that if she knew the funds were going to help the women's suffrage movement. She was really a great, great personality. And I just love that photo of her holding the torch. You don't want to mess with Louisine Havemeyer. Here's just a view of some of the wonderful works of art that the Havemeyers gave to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, including that beautiful grouping of Tiffany vases, which were really the very first big collection of Tiffany's fine glasswork to be donated to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Some of you may be familiar with these paintings, the Bronzino, the El Greco, de Hoch, Degas, and so on. But let's get right to the museum. And so what I've done is I've made little screenshots of the maps, and I've put where the different galleries are. So I went to the museum just over the weekend to make sure everything was still in the galleries, so you can see them there. So we're upstairs, second floor, European paintings. And we're going to start with some of the earliest works of art by female artists at the Met. This is Clara Peters, a bouquet of flowers from the 17th century. Now, Clara Peters was really a founding figure in the history of European still life. And still life paintings it was a genre that was very suitable for women artists, because they're not painting nudes, they're not painting great big history paintings with lots of movement, lots of action. It was considered more decorous and more appropriate for women to paint still lives. But still lives were also very, very sought after, especially these kinds of extraordinary flower paintings, these extraordinary, almost flower portraits, bouquets of showing flowers from different seasons all together. She would have consulted herbals to see details of the different plants, and painted them from life as well, to get this incredible accuracy and detail to the painting. So these were very sought after by collectors to have in their private studies, to have in their private collections, in their so-called cabinets of curiosity. So these were very, very sought after. And here we can see some more details of it. These ambitious compositions. And so you can see the insects where they've nibbled onto the flowers, little dewdrops, and the flowers that are drooping, which hints at decay and the passing of time. Now, another great female still life painter was Ursula Maddalena Caccia. This is, and we're moving from Flanders, we're moving into Italy. She's one of 6 daughters, born to a daughter of an artist. Her grandfather was an artist, and her father was also an artist. And they painted, her father, Guglielmo Caccia, painted religious subjects. Then he was known as Il Moncalvo, because that was the name of the town that they were from. And he helped to find a convent, an Ursuline convent, and Ursulines, or from Saint Ursula, or Ursula in English, was also a nun there. And her paintings actually helped to support the convent, because people would purchase it, and then the money would go to the convent itself, to help support it. And convents and monasteries were often self-supporting. They tried to be as self-supporting as possible, with growing fruits and vegetables, honey, jams, things like that, the little cordials and liqueurs that you can still get at convents. And Ursula painted art. She painted these wonderful, wonderful still lifes, very ambitious composition, and this incredible, incredible detail. Her father taught her and her sister, and they actually received commissions from courts and churches throughout northern Italy. Now, moving from one set, you can see we've moved from 627 over to one of the larger painting galleries. We're going to look at the work of Artemisia Gentileschi. And I'm sure many of you, when you thought, oh, a lecture on women's artists, there's got to be Artemisia Gentileschi. And of course there is. So Artemisia Gentileschi, considered one among the most accomplished 17th century artists, not women artists, just artists in general. And many of her paintings feature women from myths, from allegories, from the Bible, victims, suicides, warriors, great women, women in all kinds of situations. Now, Artemisia Gentileschi perhaps is unfortunately most best known for her rape at the age of 18 by another artist in her father's studio. And that's kind of overshadowed her work. In fact, some people have really interpreted her paintings of women in rather violent situations or performing violent deeds as a reaction to that tragic event in her life. But it can also be seen as reflecting the taste of the time. Okay, her patrons wanted these kinds of noble, extraordinary, powerful women figures, and she worked for some of the most powerful and aristocratic patrons in Rome, in Naples, in Venice, and even in London. She's considered really one of the most famous, 17th century painters. This is her painting that's at the Met. This is Artemisia Gentileschi painting the Jewish heroine Esther, who's appearing before her husband, King Ahasuerus of Persia. And this is to stave off the massacre of the Jewish people. She wasn't supposed to go to speak to her husband, but she goes to appeal to him and to save their lives. And she's so overcome at this moment that she's fainting. Okay, so actually she's becoming overcome with emotion. She's fainting here. Now, in the background, you can just barely make out sort of a figure. There's a figure of a servant with a dog that Artemisia painted out. So you've got this vacuum of space in between, and you've got the king jumping up to assist his wife who's collapsing in front of him. And what I love about this is this extraordinary bright sort of mustard color of her dress. It's really fantastic. And then the gorgeous drapery of the blue across it. So Artemisia is not shirking away from painting big, important subjects, no little still lives here in this kind of painting. Now we're going to move, and I'm going kind of quickly because I do have a lot to cover, and I do want to make sure we also have time for questions and answers. So here we move from Artemisia, we're moving from the 17th century in Italy to 18th century France. And this is really an extraordinary time when we're talking about women as artists, because women were admitted to the Académie Royale, the French school of the French Royal Academy of Painting, a lot thanks to the patronage of Queen Marie Antoinette, and the royal women at the court of France. This is Anne Valère Coster, a beautiful still life, a vase of flowers and conch shell. This one's from 1880, and it was likely the painting that she displayed at one of the salons. Okay, a salon were the official painting exhibitions. Okay, that were shown that artists could participate in, and of course later, a century on, that's the salon that the Impressionists are rejected from, and then they start their own movement. They start a separate movement away from the salon. But in the 18th century, the salon was how you got your name known, how people knew who you were, because they would get to see your artworks. She painted primarily portraits and scenes of everyday life, but she was most famous for his still lives of flowers. And you can see here why the details are absolutely exquisite. And one thing about the photographs that I'm showing you, these are all photos I've taken myself, or they're images in the public domain that I researched online. So here's a close-up view of this extraordinary detail. And again, this is on view at the Met. Do make sure you go and see it, because it's hard to talk about it just when it's being shown on a little screen, but when you see it in person, it really makes all the difference. Now, still lives and portraiture were the big subjects for women in the 18th century. Now, Adelaide Labillet Guillard was one of the great painters of the French Royal Academy in the 18th century. She was admitted to the Royal Academy in 1783. Along with Élisabeth Vigée. And this was, we'll see her in just a moment, but this was a time when only 4 women were eligible to join the Académie Royale. Okay, there were only 4 of them. And she showed this canvas at the Salon of 1785. It's often interpreted as a means for advocating the cause of women artists, because this shows the artist herself with 2 of her pupils, also women. And she's shown in this impractical, elegant, beautiful clothing, showing her elevated status, showing her beauty, showing her talent also in painting this incredible fabrics. That's one of the most captivating thing about this work, is how the fabric is painted. And these women, the technique of painting was absolutely extraordinary. Now, here we have an image of the Salon of 1785, and here's the portrait, the self-portrait in question right up here in the upper corner. And you can see the way it's all the paintings are hung up. And so you can see them all together, all at once. If any of you watch Bridgerton, and there's a scene when one of the Bridgerton brothers, is talking about a painting being skied. That was at the Royal Academy in England. When a painting was skied, it was put way high, so you couldn't see it very well. But these are the big paintings, are up very high. Here you can see the Oath of the Horatii. Okay, and there's the David drawings exhibition at the Met right now. But this beautiful portrait, sorry, a little tangent, this beautiful portrait really caught the public's eye. And everyone said it was one of her most beautiful portraits and one of the finest paintings at the Salon that year. And so it was really a sign of royal favor that she could exhibit at the Salon. And then here you can see why it was so popular. So she's at work in her atelier, she's working in her studio. She's holding that long stick she's holding, that's called a maul stick. And so that was a long baton with they had a little soft leather ball at the top, and that's where you could lean the ball against the painting, and then her arm could rest on the stick itself, so she wouldn't get, put her arm onto the fresh paint. She's holding her palette right there, not getting any of the lace, any of the satin, anything dirty, which is, a feat in itself. And then this beautiful fabric. You've got all the accoutrements, all the detail, all the elements that are needed to be an artist. And here you can see another detail of it and a close-up of herself. The Met also has a drawing of the 2 pupils, and this, last time I was at the Met, this was actually on view, because there's an exhibition to supplement the David show, the drawing show. And this drawing is on view. So drawings are very, they're not always on view. So when a drawing is available to see, so you want to see that, that's in the drawings and Prints and Drawings Gallery. That's on the 2nd floor. So when you go up the Great Hall stairs, you go to your left. And so you'll be able to see that there. So this really is really just an extraordinary opportunity if you can see that there. But also just you can see her wonderful technique. That's done, the drawing is in chalk, okay, in black and white and red chalks. So the little bit of stumping means when you've blended the pigments onto the page. Now, the other great female artist one of the other great female artists in Paris in the 19th century was Élisabeth Louise Vigée Lebrun. Vigée Lebrun was born in Paris. She became a professional artist after her father died. She was really expected to contribute to support her family. She was in her teens when she became an artist. Very talented. She married an art dealer, that's where Lebrun, his name was Lebrun, in 1776. And then she moved, she had left Paris during the Revolution. She actually lived in Italy and then returned. She traveled in different parts in Europe. She actually was in Russia, in Vienna, and then back to Paris, and had a very successful international career. She was one of the favorite artists of Queen Marie Antoinette, and she's best known for her portraits of the Queen. And the center portrait is her self-portrait, and then the other 2 images of Marie Antoinette. She was best known as a portraitist and very, very sought after. And like I said, she supported her family, and she did paint for a time without being a member of the Official Artists Guild, without being part of the Salon, but then she did join the Académie Royale. Now, here's her portrait of Madame Grande. Madame Grande was known as l'Indienne because she was born in India. She was famous for her beauty, and it's really just a spectacular, spectacular painting. Vigée Lebrun was admitted to the Académie Royale in 1783, and this may have been one of the paintings that helped to sort of seal the deal of her admission, and this was served as her public debut at her very first salon. Wonderful portrait. The woman is Madame Grande is sort of looking up in the distance, holding her sheet music, rather almost like a muse of music. She eventually married the minister and diplomat Talleyrand, and was, like I said, was given this nickname, l'Indienne, because she was born in India. What I love about this is just the wonderful still life effects, and then that softness of her features, of her eyes, and this slightly moistened lips, very typical of Vigée Lebrun. Now, right in the same gallery, this is in the same gallery at the Met, we have her beautiful painting of her daughter Julie looking into the mirror. And this is a play on sight, on painting, on imitation, on art imitating life, and also just an exquisite tribute to her daughter. This was painted when she was probably when Julie was around 6 years old. Julie actually traveled with her mother, and then kind of had a sad end when she died before her mother in Paris. But here we have Julie as a little girl. She's shown in profile and the full face, which if she was holding the mirror like that would not be possible. That kind of perspective is not possible, but it's this kind of double image which draws on allegorical images of sight, playing again on painting versus illusion. And this work too helped contribute to her fame, and this was in the Salon of 1787. And this kind of portraiture, this kind of sensitive image of a child, also shows this appreciation in the 18th century for children as children. In the 18th century, we start getting more and more images of children. And the idea, let me go back to this for a moment because you can see her little round figure. This idea of children and infancy and childhood as a unique moment. You know, children as children, not as just little short adults, as actual small people, but in a whole new way. Just like I said, not just miniature adults. I love this image so much, and it reminds me of my little girl. You know, she's 22 now, so that's 6-year-old is gone, long gone. But here we have this beautiful, beautiful, sensitive portrait. Now, sticking to the same gallery, we also have this wonderful image, another female artist, Marie Victoire Lemoine. This is from 1789, just a few years later, and right here we're getting to the grumbles of the French Revolution. And so it wasn't actually shown until the Salon of 1796, slightly after the Revolution, and when women were permitted and given much wider access to the privileges of the Académie Royale. This is likely a self-portrait of the artist with her sister, Marie Élisabeth, who is also a painter. And this shows the full artist studio, okay? So she's standing there in the studio, the beautiful decorated carpet. She's painting a large portrait, a large image, not just a small portrait. She's painting a large image, like a history painting. But you can see resting on the shelf behind her is a carafe and details that she could use in a still life. And then her sister is working diligently and copying on her tablet in front of her. She too holds the long stick I mentioned before, the maul stick. So that would be, again, the soft rounded tip would be, you can just sort of see it right here, would be placed against the canvas, and so she could work on the canvas without getting oil paints on her arm. And here's some details of it. The still life is absolutely exquisite, as is the painting of the fabric of the dress of her sister right here. And you can see it's signed at the bottom. And so it's a tribute, really, a tribute to the virtue, to her virtues as a painter and her great facility in still life and in portraiture and history, because we also have these three kinds of painting all together: her portrait, her sister's portrait, the still life, and the history painting. And so that kind of history painting, that telling the story, was really considered ill-suited for women because it's just too much and too big. But our next artist had no patience for anything like that. And our next artist is Rosa Bonheur. We are moving out of the second floor European paintings gallery right at the top of the stairs and going over to the 19th century galleries. Okay, so this is Rosa Bonheur. Rosa Bonheur was we could maybe consider her a new woman in the 19th century. She was known for wearing men's clothing. She got special permission, actually, from the French police to be able to wear trousers when she was out sketching and working. She did a lot of animal images, so she said she needed to wear trousers because it was more practical for working. But she had to get permission. Women were not allowed to wear trousers and like a man would have at the time. Here we have a view of her with her first partner, Nathalie Mikas. She was barely open a lesbian. She said very plainly she had no patience for men. The only male figures that she would deal with were bulls or dogs or horses in her paintings. But she lived with Nathalie Mikas for over 40 years. And then afterwards, after Mikas died, she began a relationship with the American painter, Anna Elisabeth Klumpke, who went to Paris to paint her portrait. But Klumpke, when she was a child, she grew up and she had a Rosa Bonheur doll. And I found this when I was doing my research on women's artists, and I found this through my research on Rosa Bonheur. And this was about 20 inches tall, a porcelain doll, and it was sold with her masculine clothing, with her cropped hair, and it was very, very popular in the United States. And it was sold primarily, I think, in the 1860s. And Klumpke had one when she was a child. She was growing up in San Francisco. She had a doll, and then she moved to Paris to meet Rosa Bonheur. And ended up they ended up living together, and they grew very, very close. And the portrait of Rosa Bonheur belongs to the Metropolitan Museum. It's not on view, and Anna Klumpke donated it to the Met. Now here you can see some paintings purchased from the Wolf bequest. Okay, from the Wolf brought with the Wolf bequest by Rosa Bonheur. Okay, a hound weaning the calves, and of course when you go into the 19th century galleries, so we're heading towards the south side of the Metropolitan Museum, you have her magnificent horse fair. This is her best known painting. It shows the horse market that was held in Paris in the Boulevard de l'Hôpital. So is a great big outdoor horse market. Bonheur dressed as a man she got permission, like I said, to dress as a man to go to the horse fair so she could draw the horses and draw the grooms and draw the men all together without attracting attention. She was just go in there and concentrate on her painting. It was exhibited at the Paris Salon in 1853, and it received wide praise. Everybody, they considered it as fine as a George Stubbs or Delacroix, or even as like a Greek sculpture. In fact, she referred to it as a Parthenon frieze, her own version of the Parthenon frieze. And so it's an immense painting. It's absolutely enormous, and it dominates the gallery. And those wonderful horses. It took her a year and a half of sketching there. Okay, twice a week she would go, and she didn't sketch, more delicate, shall we say, the saddle horses. It's really these big draft horses just thundering up the boulevard in this great movement and this great energy. And here we have some of the men who are wrestling with and dealing with the horses. It was sold to a collector from New Jersey, William Wright, and then it was sold to A.T. Stewart. Okay, A.T. Stewart, who had the great department store. And when Stewart passed away, Cornelius Vanderbilt purchased it and then gave it to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So it's really a fantastic painting. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it in real life, or you know it from prints. Now, when it comes to great female artists of the 19th century, of course, we also need to speak about Mary Cassatt. Now, Mary Cassatt was born in Pennsylvania, but she spent most of her adult life and her career in France, and she was the only American who exhibited with the Impressionists in Paris. She moved there to Paris in 1874, and she met Edgar Degas, who was her mentor, her friend, who introduced her to the circles of the Impressionists. And she really felt that women should have careers of their own. And she once wrote that a woman should be someone and not something. And so she was someone. She was a great painter, and she was also a great patron of the arts. And as I mentioned before, she helped Louisiana Havemeyer develop her collection. There's a wonderful photo of Mary Cassatt in her garden. So the Cassatt's paintings, we'll find them over in the American wing. So we're going across the other side of the museum and going to the American wing. That's where right now, and I'll mention this, also the wonderful Costume Institute exhibition that's going on right now. And so upstairs on the second floor, we'll find this is one gallery. This is gallery 768. So I'm going to stay in this gallery for a little while because just like the 18th century French gallery, we've got these wonderful American paintings in this gallery, including this fabulous image by Mary Cassatt. Now, in the starting around the 1890, she began to paint more and more images of women and children. Or just children alone. She did not have children of her own, but she had nieces and nephews and was just devoted to them. And she had this wonderful, wonderful, sensitive touch with rendering these images of maternal interaction and of women interacting with their children. These are actually it's not an actual mother and child. They're two models. But they're together in this painting as if they were mother and child. And so the young mother is sewing, her daughter sort of plopped herself into her lap. And this was actually purchased by Louisiana Havemeyer. Louisiana Havemeyer bought this in 1901, just a year after it was painted. And she remarked at its truthfulness. And here's a quote from Havemeyer. She says, "Look at that little child that has just thrown herself against her mother's knee, regardless of the result and oblivious to the fact that she could disturb her mama." And she is quite right. She does not disturb her mother. Mama simply draws back a bit and continues to sew. And I love the way the little girl just looks out and she's plopped herself into her mom's lap, and the mother's just her lifting it up and continuing to sew. Another wonderful Cassatt image is Lady at the Tea Table. And this shows this is a typo, it should be 1901, excuse me. This shows Mary Dickinson Riddle. So this is a cousin of Cassatt's mother, and this teapot that she's holding, those were given by her cousin to Mary Cassatt. And so as to thank her for this, she painted this wonderful portrait. The artist's daughter actually didn't like it very much. And so Cassatt kept it, and then Louisiana Havemeyer persuaded her to give it to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And so you've got that extraordinary still life with the gilded blue and white Canton porcelain. And then here you can see Mrs. Riddle, who's just about to serve the tea, a very, very traditional kind of female thing to do. Here we have, in the same gallery, a beautiful image by Cecilia Beaux of Ernesta, a young child with her nurse. And Cecilia Beaux was a great portraitist of the 19th century. And what I love about this is just that fantastic fabric, that fantastic, wonderful brushwork. And also, it's not on view, but also the Met has a portrait of Ernesta when she was 22. So we have these two images together, and the Met purchased that second image of Ernesta as a young woman, as a 22-year-old, directly from the artist herself. And Cecilia Beaux was heralded by her colleague, William Merritt Chase, who called her the greatest living woman, not only the greatest living woman painter, but the best that has ever lived. But Bow herself, she never referred to herself as a woman painter. She was just a painter. And the man really supported her early career by purchasing this painting. Now, right across from Ernesta as a little girl, we've got the Mary Cassatt, and then two other paintings. But what I'm going to focus on is the great little statuettes by Bessie Potter Bonneau. This is a young mother. This was one of the most popular works of art that she ever produced. And in fact, she became known for her images of motherhood, and over 30 bronze casts were made of this. And it was her most popular statuette. The museum purchased this from the artist herself in 1906. And so we've got a young mother cradling her baby. And here you can see it from all sides. It almost has this impressionistic view to it. And it's right across from another image by the same artist of a girl dancing, perhaps dancing a quadrille, stepping forward to bow and to dance. And this kind of two kinds of things that women should be doing, shall we say, dancing, taking care of children, but captured with such beauty and such spontaneity. I just love both of these images, and the texture on the bronze work is just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So moving into the before we move into the bigger part of the American wing, we'll talk about a couple more sculptors. I do want to mention something. This was not in my original presentation because this is just on view now as part of the Winslow Homer Cross Currents exhibition. And this is an amazing, powerful piece by the great American artist, Kara Walker. It's called The Crossing. She painted this watercolor. It's a watercolor and a drawing in 2017. It was initially reproduced in the New Yorker. This is the first time it's on public display. And so it's a reference to Leutz's Washington Crossing in Delaware, but we also have Homer's The Gulf Stream referred to it. So that's why it's part of the Cross Currents exhibition, and it's in the gallery where the Gulf Stream is usually on display. And Kara Walker is one of the greatest Black artists working in America at this time, right now. I mean, she's just extraordinary. This is a fabulous, fabulous piece. You should definitely see it, and it's enormous. It's enormous. So it'll really knock you out when you go to see that. And like I said, it's part of the Winslow Homer Cross Currents exhibition. One more gallery over, you see another great, powerful female artist, Georgia O'Keeffe. And so we're moving into the 20th and with the Kara Walker, of course, in the 21st century. And here's her Rancheros Church from 1930. Now, what I like about this is also with a contemporary vase, a contemporary pottery vase by a Native American artist. And so O'Keeffe really moved into the Southwest and had great appreciation for the landscape, for the land, and for the peoples on that land. We can see more O'Keeffe if we move across the museum, and I'll see that in just a moment. But just a few more things just before we go, because I want to be aware of time. I want to give us enough time to have a few questions. On the second floor balcony, you can see this fabulous jewelry by the American artist Florence Kohler. This wonderful necklace, and then the brooch. You can wear it together in many different ways. The necklace could be worn alone, and there was a whole set. And there's a fabulous group of American artists, of women who were jewelers in the 19th and 20th century. So this is on the second floor balcony. And then if you go downstairs, you have this vivacious, extraordinary little fountain, Janet Scudder, the Frog Fountain. She was best known for her ornamental sculptures, which were sought by wealthy Americans for their lavish houses. This was actually modeled in Paris, but she brought it to New York. And Stanford White purchased a cast of it for his home in St. James on Long Island. It's really helped Stanford White helped get her name recognized, and so more people started to purchase her work. And you can always see small children like jumping around it, which I love. You get that the actual children and the child in that fountain itself. Downstairs in the Engelhard Court, you have, and I know many of you are familiar with this wonderful autumn landscape by Agnes Northrop. She was an artist at the Tiffany Studios. This is a tour de force of Tiffany glass. It was never installed. It was done for a for a home in Boston, but one of Tiffany's close friends donated the museum to the window to the museum because this is Robert DeForest. He was president and founder of the American Wing, and so this was one of the gifts that he presented to the Met. Like I said, it was never installed at the owner's home. But Agnes Northrop, she was an artist in the Tiffany studio. The label right next to it has a reproduction of the drawing by Northrop, and then it was made of this in the later period, in the later Tiffany works, you have this extraordinary layering of glass. So you have different sections of glass, one on top of another, and no paint to create the details. Is the modeling the texture and the form just created using glass, and the full range of glass from the variegated surface by wrinkling the molten glass, or even casting making different color effects by embedding confetti-like flakes of glass on the surface of others. And then the plates of glass, one superimposed on the other, gives you this wonderful, wonderful sense of depth. So my advice, I always tell people to step away from the painting and you can see those different layers and have this feeling of the landscape moving way back into the distance. So our sort of last little gallop through the Met, we're going to head on over to the modern and contemporary art wing. Georgia O'Keeffe, I mentioned her before. And here's one of her classic Southwest images, this bones in the landscape. There's no real sense of scale or perspective. This title is very poetic too. From the far away nearby, you've got the far off landscape. You've got the close-up detail of the skull and the antlers right there. And the beautiful, beautiful colors. One thing, when you think of O'Keeffe, sometimes you think they seem rather flat, but if you get up close to this painting, you can see that wonderful sculptural effect of the bones, of the antlers, especially. It's just stunning. Now, in the modern contemporary wing, there's a sort of chronology almost with the discussion of with the presentation of modern art of 20th century art, and this set of the 4 panels by Florine Stettheimer. These are so much fun, okay? They were created between 1929 and 1942, and it's a sort of composite, a kind of artistic visual composite vision of New York's economic, social, and cultural institutions. Florine Stettheimer was an extraordinary personality. She painted the first nude self-portrait. She painted images of race and sexuality. She showed the leisure activities of her family and friends. She was very well-to-do, and she hosted a salon with her sisters that attracted members of the avant-garde in New York in the 1920s and 30s. She even made the stage designs and the costumes for Gertrude Stein and Virgil Thompson's opera Four Saints in 3 acts. And this painting here is really considered one of her best known pieces. But she showed her exhibits throughout in exhibitions in Paris and New York. And actually in 1938, the curator of MoMA sent American art to Europe, and Stettheimer and O'Keeffe were the only women artists who were included. And she was friends with Marcel Duchamp, who organized a retrospective of her work on an exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in 1946. So she's really an extraordinary person. So here we have the cathedrals of Broadway. Those neon lit theaters of Broadway. You can see Roxy, and you can see the lights, Rialto, the names of the theaters. And then the cathedrals of Fifth Avenue, literally a cathedral with a newly married couple. The photographer is taking photographs. I hope you can see my little cursor here. Tiffany's right up there. Okay. And this new couple ready to, start their life of high society and consumerism and, Altman's and Tiffany's, all the jewelry, the fine furnishings, everything is right there. And actually here you can see this is Florine Stettheimer and her sisters. And here you can recognize the General Sherman, the monument by Augustus St. Gaudens, that's right there on 5th and 59th Street. The other 2 images show the cathedrals of Wall Street and the cathedrals of art. So Wall Street, you've got the stock exchange, all right, and politicians, so this close relationship between politics and big business. And the cathedrals of art, you've got the Museum of Modern Art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Whitney Museum of Art, and everyone paying tribute right there on the stairs of the Great Hall, of the grand staircases at the Metropolitan Museum of Art itself. Now, going upstairs from the in the second floor of the in modern contemporary art wing, we go into the back galleries, and we see this fabulous piece by Helen Frankenthaler, her Stride. She was an American abstract expressionist painter. She really was hugely important in the history of post-war American painting. And she began to paint in the 1960s. She began to use acrylic paints more than oil paints, and because they don't get also the absorption changes on the canvas. And she emphasizes great, big, intense, blotchy forms. And this is called stride. You can see this sort of sense of movement, and movement is just abstracted to one that great orange stride moving forward. This is a very, very large painting. And if you go around the corner from there, you'll see this huge piece. I love this. And you can see the young lady there's really for scale to give you a sense of this. Louise Nevelson, she used to collect different objects and put them together to create her sculptures, and to create these great big wooden wall pieces, outdoor sculptures. And this is called Mrs. N's Palace. It's made up of more of 100 pieces, all connected together. It took her 13 years to complete, and she unveiled it on her 80th birthday. Okay. And just an amazing figure. It's, you can sort of walk around to the front and you can see inside it. You can't go into it, but it would, you could fit inside the space. It's very, very inside the sculpture. It's very, very large. Okay, so here you can have a close-up view of it, and it's got this black matte surface to it. And so the Mrs. N, she's Nevelson herself is the title of this. She was captivated by creating this kind of space, almost like a tomb, as well as this intimate and this kind of private space. And so she would find objects and then put them all together. And speaking of found objects, this amazing piece, Shakaya Booker, she's an artist originally from Newark, New Jersey. She's still alive. She's still creating amazing works of art, and she mostly makes them from discarded rubber tires that she salvages from city streets. This is called Raw Attraction. Very jarring, very powerful. I can't tell you how many people I see walk by it who just sort of stop and like, wait, what am I looking at? And yes, that's what you're looking at. It's like a vagina dentata, this emasculating woman's parts coming out at you. Very, very tough. And it's called Raw Attraction. Now, what I love about this is when you're approaching it, it looks almost soft, and then you realize it's made of that hard black rubber. And so this juxtaposition of the softness that should be a female part, and then that hard black rubber is really, really extraordinary. I love Booker's work. I think she's a fantastic, fantastic artist. She's just transforming industrial materials into this organic forms. So to wrap up my sort of whirlwind, there's a lot more art by a lot of women at the Met. Here's Sonia Delany, there's Jean Devreux, there's Evelyn Beatrice Longman, there's Hatshepsut, there's all sorts of art. And right now what we have at the Met, I showed you the Kara Walker, but it's also the fantastic new exhibition, the Costume Institute exhibition, if you saw about the news about the Met Ball, the party of the year, as we call it in New York. And so the In American Anthology of Fashion includes so many wonderful works of clothing, so many pieces of clothing by women designers, by women artists, including this. This is an abolition quilt, possibly by Maria Theresa Baldwin Hollander. She was a fashion retailer. She likely conceived the design, but we don't know who the embroiderer was. But embroidery is really one of the women's the things that women do par excellence, embroidery, that kind of traditional kind of handwork. But this was dedicated to abolition, to crying out against human enslavement. And this was displayed at the 1853 World's Fair in New York City. This is on view right now and part of the anthology of fashion exhibitions right across from George Washington's coat that he wore for his inauguration. So fabulous, fabulous show. I ran through it quickly the other day during the members preview. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. So any questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen in just a moment, but I do want to thank Linda, thank Nadine, thank Laura, thank the National Arts Club. You all can see there, that is my email address. I don't mind getting random emails from people who have watched this, crazy quick rush through, but I'm going to turn off my screen and here we are. So,
this was just fantastic. My God. Thank you. Brava, brava, brava.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you.
Oh, really marvelous. And I'm not even tired.
I'm a little breathless, but there we go.
Yes. Well, the first thing I want to ask, because we have some questions, but I want to ask you, because I do know when your next tour is going to be. I believe it's on May 31st.
Oh, no, it's actually May 29th. I'm going to be doing a tour on May 29th. Sorry about that. It's May 29th, and it's with the Bowery Boys Walks. I can I can put the link into, there we go. So thank you, Nadine, put the link in there. So Bowery Boys Walks. I've become an accidental specialist in the Gilded Age mansions of Fifth Avenue, which I was doing before the TV show, and so everybody seemed to enjoy that. So coming on one of my tours, we'd love to see you guys there.
Oh, wonderful. So some of the questions: what percentage of the Met's collection are women artists?
I really would not even know where to start counting, because it depends on what you're speaking about. There's lots of textiles and lots of clothing that was made by women or for women. There are paintings. We've got sculptures. So I wouldn't know what percentage there is. It's not a large amount that's on view, but the ones I showed you are some of, I think, some of my favorite pieces, at least. But
do you think they have? They're bringing in more women now?
I think women are definitely being highlighted more and in a different way. And one thing about the Costume Institute, the show right now, the Anthology of Fashion, is a lot of women and people of color, women of color are also being highlighted and emphasized in a way. They're being presented in a way and acknowledged in a way that they previously weren't, which is a huge loss. So being able to see these kinds of works is really important.
Now, during the early 1700s, the women were not really allowed to fraternize with the male painters. Did they get together themselves? Did they have enclaves in which they got together to talk about themes and points of view? And if they did, where did they go to do it?
Well, that's a great question. So the Académie Royale, it admitted women, and then they slowly admitted more women, and they undoubtedly knew each other and they knew of each other. They're probably competing for clients together, amongst themselves to a certain extent, but they did know each other, and they likely had, I don't know the details of it, but I'm guessing they would have had dedicated studios or dedicated spaces. But that's a really interesting question, because in the 19th century, if any of you know Emma Stebbins' famous statue, The Angel of the Waters at the Bethesda Terrace in Central Park, Emma Stebbins lived in Rome with a whole group of women. They were, I think Henry James called them the great marmoreal flock. They were artists, they were actresses, they were painters, they were sculptors, all living together, all women. Some of them were lovers, some of them were partners together, but they were famous for this artistic conclave of women, and they were clearly all together. Emma Stebbins' partner was Charlotte Cushman. It's just an extraordinary story. So yeah, they were openly living together and openly participating in making art together.
Wonderful, wonderful. tell me, in the salons when they would go, how did the men treat the women painters when they would come for exhibitions? Were they able to speak with them? Were they allowed in?
Well, the salon was an open public exhibition. So men and women went together. Children would go to the salon too if they wanted to. So men and women were interacting together. I'm sure there were male artists who did not appreciate women, participating. But if they were sticking to portraiture and still lives and things like that, sort of the women's kind of subjects, that was okay. I think that was probably not such a big deal. And Adelaide Guillard, her great painting was praised by all men and women.
And why did the Met stop showing that massive wall of paintings and start focusing on one portrait at a time?
Well, so you can actually see the works of art. So my very first internship when I was in undergrad was at the Wadsworth Atheneum in Hartford, Connecticut, the oldest art museum in the United States. And they've got a great gallery that is hung like that, with the paintings higher up and the paintings lower down to give you that kind of 19th century feel. It's just hard to see the works of art. I like them eye level. And so if you have a very tall director, they might be a little higher. Or if you have a short person, it might be a little lower. And so you can see them better.
Oh, okay. In thinking of sales and creating income in the 17th and 18th century, might you know the dynamic around the relationships of female painters and the dealers who sold their work?
Well, I mentioned the still lifes painted by Ursula Maddalena Caccia. It was her dad who was selling them. Her father was in charge of selling the works of art, and we've gotten clients for that. Artemisia Gentileschi she traveled Europe. She went to London. She was in contact with, dukes and royalty, and who were commissioning works of art directly from her. The Mesdames de France, the daughters of the King of France, were the patrons of the French artist I was showing you. Élisabeth Vigée Brun traveled in Russia and was patronized there. And so they would work directly with clients or directly with people, especially with portraits. They had to, they would sit for a portrait.
Did they have to take on other jobs the way we do now in the, our second jobs in order?
Well, Vigée Lebrun, she was an artist. She helped to support her family actually when she was a teen, when she was an artist, because she was such a talented artist. These were professional artists, so that was their job. I think that's probably just what they did. But Mary Cassatt, she was also an art dealer in the sense she traveled with the Havemeyer, so I'm sure they would have paid for her room and board as they're traveling around looking at art, and she's telling them what to purchase. So perhaps that's a side job.
Now, what genre or artist or a specific artwork do you think is missing in the Met collection and that you would like to see added someday?
Well, I'm sort of full disclosure. I've worked at the Met for 28 years now, I think, in different departments. I'm a volunteer there now. So I think they do everything right. And I like the way they're emphasizing points of view and artists and people who have not been emphasized before. So, for example, the wonderful Afrofuturist period room, the way women designers and people of color are highlighted in the Anthology of Fashion show, and they're showing things in a different way and in a more holistic kind of way, because we'll have in the paintings galleries, there'll also be sculptures along with the objects, and so we see things in different point of view and across different cultures. So I think they're getting there. Nothing's ever perfect, but we're looking at art in a different way.
Yes. And why were men always in the forefront of the important movements?
Now, that's the question for the ages. I think
it's trending right now.
Yeah, I think that's too big for an art history talk. I mean, oh my goodness, that's hard because I'm a graduate of a women's college. So my Smithy spidey senses going off. That's a kind of loaded question. Power, I think, comes down to power. Who's got it and who's willing to use it and who doesn't have it. So not just women, but other underrepresented groups.
And also, did these women artists have mentors, and were they able to talk about it, or did they have to keep it secret and private?
Well, in the early periods, so the artists such as Clara Peters or Ursula Katcha or Artemisia Gentileschi, they're working with, they were often trained by family members. So Artemisia Gentileschi was famously taught by her father. Same with Ursula Katcha, she was taught by her father. So you had to have someone in the family who would teach you. A woman couldn't go to become an artist just out of the blue because they had the passion for it in the earlier periods. Later on, like Mary Cassatt, she grew up in Pennsylvania and she's like, I want to be an artist. Bing, bye. And she was from a well-to-do family. She could do that too. She was from a well-to-do family. And so she had the means to move to Paris and to become an artist and to be independent. Rosa Bonheur did the same thing. She wanted to be an artist. She wanted to be openly living with her female companion, basically an open lesbian. And she just did it because she also had that strong personality. Somebody in the 18th and the 17th century would not have been able to do something like that. It's just society would not have accepted that kind of thing. And so Artemisia had her father, but then she also grew into being a great artist on her own right.
Well, I think you might like this. As someone says, this was fabulous. I listened to a lot of art lectures and you were one of the best.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
If you could have any of the works you highlighted, which one would it be?
Oh, that's so hard. Oh, I hate this. Because you never know what you want. You know, it changes according to the time of day. I mean,
like which child is your favorite?
Exactly. I think I love the Julie Lebrun, but I think I might get a little tired of that and I want something a little more powerful. I couldn't have the Bonheur. It's just too big. I mean, it would not fit in my house. Maybe wear some of the jewelry, some of the beautiful jewelry, or maybe even one of the small bronze sculptures. That's something perhaps a little more suitable.
Do you think the beauty of the painting of the clothes, the preoccupation with that, do you think that was a substitute for other points of view that you might have wanted but knew they couldn't go into that arena?
Well, if you look at if you're thinking of, say, the French 18th century pieces and those gorgeous folds of satin and the lace and everything, which are absolutely stunning, that's something that just captivates people so immediately. You can appreciate that just for how beautiful they are and the beautiful colors and the beautiful textures. And that's also a way of the artist, male or female, to show their bravura, to show their technique. This is showing they can paint satin that looks like satin. And so you look at that, you don't think, oh, a woman must have painted this because it's a blue dress. You think, holy mackerel, look at that blue dress. Look at how gorgeous it is.
The sheen.
Yes, the sheen, the texture of it. And artists sort of show off, just in quotes, by showing different kinds of textures. So you have like open lace against the soft satin. If you think of the still life, so you have the flower petals, you have the hard stone, you've got the fruit, the soft fruit. And so you're showing your talent. That's really demonstrating your talent as an artist. So people can get lost in those kind of details. So women were not supposed to paint big history paintings, but they could paint other things with extraordinary skill and with extraordinary detail, and be appreciated for that on its own.
Did you call that what we call painterly?
Oh, well, so in art history, painterly is sometimes like the loose brush strokes kind of thing. So sometimes painterly is that, but you could say, I just call this refined kind of technique. I mean, I wouldn't say one specific term for it. I don't think I'd say painterly, because painterly I always think of painterly as being like loose, that kind of brush strokes. But just.
So our last question, Did these historic women painters paint nudes, male or female?
The early ones we're looking at, no. I mean, even Mary Cassatt didn't paint any nudes. I didn't. Florine Stedheimer did. She painted herself as a nude. I don't know. That's not at the Met, so I didn't show that. She painted herself as a nude. Georgia O'Keeffe was photographed in the nude by her husband. But if you think of male nudes that or men painting female nudes, like say in the 19th century, we don't have women painting themselves in that way. You really don't. You may have female nude sculptures sculpted by women, but yeah, I can't think of anything. You think of like a Manet's Olympia, like a female version of that. I can't, not at least on view at the Met.
So as Mr. Tompkins says, or Miss Tompkins, I'm not exactly sure, this was amazing presentation. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you all so much.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, everybody from coming to view this. And remember, you can see it again on the National Arts Club YouTube. And please invite your friends to view it too. It's open to the public from around the world. And if you want to take a trip with Emma, don't forget to get in touch with her. The Gilded Age, I think that's what's trending right now in New York City, at least.
Oh, it definitely is. It definitely is.
Thank you again. Thank you. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure. Thank you all for being here. Have a great night. Good night.